Zophar is the legalist, friends, we would note. Unlike Bildad, the traditionalist, Zophar is the legalist. He assumed that God works according to a certain measure, according to a law. He pretends to know what God will do in every given circumstance. Zophar has a very scientific mind too. He puts the emphasis on laws. If one would bring him up to date, he would be more or less an atheist of the present day. His philosophy is that laws and not God run the universe. It is obvious that we cannot have law without somebody who makes the law, but Zophar is oblivious to this fact. He holds that God is bound by laws, never operates beyond the circumference of his own set laws. He is probably the senior member of the group. He speaks with a dogmatic finality that is even more candid, even more crude than both Bildad and Eliphaz put together. Notice verses 1 and 2 of Job 11. Then Zophar, the Naamathite, replied, "Are all these words to go unanswered? Is this talker to be vindicated?" Is this talker, in other words, Job? He's saying that Job is covering his sin with his multitude of words. Job has tried to make it clear that a man in his condition, suffering as he is not apt to put up a front. Zophar simply ignores that and says that Job is trying to talk his way out of a situation. It is true that there are men who are able to talk their way out of every situation, who are clever at manipulation by words. That is the way some lawyers win cases in courts these days. It is really not a matter of justice being done, but rather the cleverness of the lawyer, his gift, his specialization in this area of manipulation that wins the case and not truth. This is not true, certainly not of Job, but that's what Zophar seems to say. Verse 3 now. Will your idle talk reduce men to silence? Will no one rebuke you when you mock? Zophar goes a step farther and actually accuses Job of lying. He says, will your idle talk reduce men to silence? He has accused him of being a hypocrite, and now he accuses him of lying. That is even more crude than Bildad had been. Bildad had said that Job was a hypocrite, but never ever did Bildad refer to Job as one who is a liar. Zophar is now going to assume the pious position of being on the inside with God. Zophar feels that Job ought to listen to him because he has the last and final word, and that his word, in fact, is the very words of God. The arrogance of this man. Verse 4 and 5. You say to God, my beliefs are flawless, and I am pure in your sight. Verse 5. Oh, how I wish that God would speak, that he would open his lips against you. Oh, how I wish that God would open his lips against you. Notice the vantage point of Zophar. Since God wasn't speaking, Zophar speaks for God. I don't think Zophar had any message for Job except to strut. Now in verse 6, Zophar says, and disclose to you the secrets of wisdom, of true wisdom, which has two sides. Know this, God has even forgotten some of your sin. God has even forgotten some of your sin. What Zophar says to Job is really a blow, my friend, not a comfort. He tells Job that he is not even getting half of what he has really coming to him. Now, that is a pretty hard statement. He says the fact that Job is suffering as much as he is shows that Job is a lot worse than his friends even dreamed he was. He categorizes Job as a miserable sinner. Zophar is not very supportive of a man in Job's helpless, hurting condition. We must remember that all this time Job is a very sick man, covered with sores from head to toe in desperate pain. He actually thinks he may expire at any moment. And at times he even hopes that he will die. Verse 7. Can you fathom the mysteries of God? Can you probe the limits of the Almighty? Notice, can you probe the limits of the Almighty? That's a great statement. It is a marvelous statement. But who doesn't know that? Job will tell him later that everyone knows what Zophar tries to say he alone knows. No man can fathom the mysteries of God, can discover God. God is revealed only by his self disclosure. The only way you can know about God is what he is pleased to reveal of himself to us. That he has revealed very, very little of himself to us. You know, friends, all our understanding of God at best is only a misunderstanding of God. That's what William Tyndale suggested. In fact, friends, the little that God has revealed to us has some of us so awestruck we just drop our jaw in open total splendor as we look at this amazing God who's chosen to reveal himself in a very fractional way to us to keep us sober. That limit of God itself confuses us. We cannot see what God has not revealed. Friends, can I dare to suggest that worship begins the moment amazement starts? Unless your jaws drop in total awe and amazement to the point of your heart stopping too, in total awestruckness, you cannot worship this transcendent God. God is the sum of all our thoughts. Man cannot look through a microscope or out into the heavens through a telescope and discover God. God must reveal himself. God makes himself known to man. This is a profound statement that Zophar makes, but it is not new to Job. He knows man cannot fathom the mysteries of God or probe the limits of the Almighty. He continues in verses 8 and 9, they are higher than the heavens. What can you do? They are deeper than the depths of the grave. What can you know? Their measure is longer than the earth and wider than the sea. He gives a lofty discourse about God, which is truly tremendous, which just doesn't touch the need of Job. Friends, we must allow text to meet context. We must scratch where the itch is. Knowing all this heady stuff about God is one thing, but does it cater to the need of man? Never give a hungry man the gospel, somebody said, because an empty stomach does not have ears. First feed him, then give him the eternal gospel. Sometimes we, like Zophar, are so enthused and want to share the gospel for our own ends so that God is tremendously pleased about us that we forget people's needs around us. Many times people want bread before the bread of life, and therefore start taking care of the social perspective of man and then give him the deepest, the core need, the spiritual, the word of God. Verse 10 and 12. If he comes along and confines you in prison and convenes a court, who can oppose him? Verse 11. Surely he recognizes deceitful men. And when he sees evil, does he not take note? Verse 12. But a witless man can no more become wise than a wild donkey's colt can be born a man. Friends, what can you say of Zophar? These words must have ripped through Job's heart like a bullet. But a witless man can no more become wise than a wild donkey's colt can be born a man. What is he calling Job? Of course, he's speaking of Job here, not of himself. He feels that he is the answer to every question of Job. And he takes on this position of authority and dominance, and he pulverizes Job under the mallet of his dominance. Now you notice verse 13. Yet, if you devote your heart to him, Stretch out your hands to him. If you put away the sin that is in your hand, and allow no evil to dwell in your tent, then you will lift up your face without shame, will stand firm without fear. Then, if you fulfill these conditions of a devout heart, of stretching your hands to God, of putting away sin, of allowing no evil to dwell in your tent, then only can you lift up your face without shame, and you can stand firm without fear. Who is like this? Who can fulfill these requirements? If grace is conditional, none of us would merit it, friends. Notice what Zophar says here. Only then can you lift your face, stand firm without fear. Again, he comes at Job on the basis that Job is hiding something, that there is secret sin in the life of Job. All three of Job's friends assume that Job is doing a fantastic job in covering up his secret sin. Job actually isn't aware of anything that he should put away, yet there is something, as Job himself sees a little later. Verses 16 and 17 now. You will surely forget your trouble, recalling it only as waters gone by. Life will be brighter than noonday, and darkness will become like morning. Life brighter than noonday, darkness like morning. Zophar, friends, is saying, if you would just deal with the sin that is hidden in your life and quit fighting against it, God would hear, God would answer your prayers, and God would restore you. Insinuation, friends, assumption, making an ass out of you and me. Verse 20, but the eyes of the wicked will fail, and escape will elude them. Their hope will become a dying gasp. Notice the poetry of these words. Their hope will become a dying gasp. Beautiful words, but it just stays there. Beautiful words, no depth. He concludes by saying to Job, you are going to come to the time when the judgment of God will come upon you unless you confess your secret sin. He predicts the absolute and complete judgment of Job. That concludes Zophar's address, which in reality is a stringent attack upon Job's integrity. All three friends have now had their say. Remember, they came to be comforters of Job, but we've understood thus far that all that they've said is not to comfort Job. They seem quite merciless, not even pausing to consider the present agony of Job. Remember his cattle, his sheep, his camels, his own children, 10 of them, his body covered with sores from head to toe, everything gone. Someone did say, no treachery is worse than betrayal by a friend. No treachery is worse than betrayal by a friend. Friends, no treachery is worse than betrayal by a friend.